Hi, and thanks for tuning in to 7.5 Solve and Write Division Equations. I've given you a couple examples down here on this screen of a couple different ways that you will see division problems represented in equations. So you'll obviously see them with the division sign, and so that's in problems like this one here. You will also see them written as x over 2 and 2 over x, or something like that. Because remember that that bar, that fraction bar right there, actually means division. So that's just a little head start onto what we're going to look at. So let's get started. All right, in this first section on textbook page 561, that's where you want to get started. So on textbook 561, that's where we're at here. You want to go ahead and look at solve and write equations, division equations. So it says to scan the lesson and list 2 real-world scenarios in which you would use division equations. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what they came up with here. And it says division equations can be used to find the total length of something when you know the length of a piece and the number of pieces. And then another division problem says division equations can be used to find the actual size of something when you know the size of the model and the scale. So let's go ahead and dive into that a little bit further. For the real world link, it says allowances. Leslie spends $5 a month on snacks at school, which is 1/4 of her monthly allowance. Complete the questions below to find Leslie's monthly allowance. So it says to draw a bar diagram to represent $5 as 1/4. So off to the side, even though it's already written right here, off to the side, and actually let me just, somewhere around here on your paper, I'd like you to go ahead and draw a bar diagram. Now, I'm going to erase this part of it. Let me try that again. I'd like you to draw a bar diagram kind of like this. I don't want to draw it this close, so. Oops. All right. Now, it says to draw the bar diagram where $5 represents 1/4. So that means you need 4 chunks, like that. Okay? So then it says, complete the questions below. Okay. So $5 is 1/4. Perfect. And then it says, what is Leslie's monthly allowance? So if this chunk is worth 5, that means this is 5, this is 5, and this is 5. So Leslie's allowance is going to be $20. So let's go ahead and erase that there. And we've got $5 here, and we've got the monthly allowance. So let's go ahead and label that. So right here, you want to go ahead and write monthly allowance, and right here you want to write the $5. Actually, it's already written for you, so you just want to, actually, hold on one second, let me see. Yeah, you want to go ahead and write that in. Sorry about that. And then also you want to write the $20 in right there. And please, again, make sure that you have the diagram drawn here. Even though it's over here, I want you to draw it as well, please. And then if it says, what operation did you use to find Leslie's allowance? So we actually used multiplication. So this whole section is going to show you how division equations use multiplication. But that should make sense because how do you undo division? With its inverse operation, which is multiplication. So it says, how can you check your answer to determine if it's accurate? And it says, I can use inverse operations and divide $20 by 4 to check and see if the answer is correct. So let's go ahead and move forward and see how the rest of the chapter plays out. All right, it says solve division equations. Now we're on textbook page 562, and it says, in the situation on the previous page, in equation A divided by 4 equals 5, where A represents the monthly allowance, means the monthly allowance divided by 4 equals $5. Since multiplication and division are inverse operations, use multiplication to solve division equations. So I think that it's really important that off to the side that you write out the equation that they gave you. The equation that they gave you was, again, A divided by 4. And that looks like a 9. Let's try this over again. A divided by 4 is going to equal $5. So now, when you think of division, you think of getting smaller. But when you think of division equations, you have to think of getting bigger because you're going to be multiplying to figure out what you started with. So now it says solve A divided by 3. I think it says solve A divided by 3. My eyes are failing me. A divided by 3 equals 7. So off to the side, go ahead and write A divided by 3 equals 7. Now, to use the model, they've drawn one here for you. So A, we're going to go ahead and forget that they've used this. Don't even think about this yet. You don't have to cross it out, but I want you to draw your own model. Because A divided by 3, so you need to think about how many slots you'll need. You'll need to have 3 chunks, right? And it says A divided into 3 is equal to 7. So 7 means that each chunk is worth 7. So to find out what A is, in this case, we found out that A is equal to 21. What did we need to do? Well, we actually multiplied both sides by 3. So let's go ahead and look at method 2, which you'll see is right down here. So for method 2, this is going to be how you'll see it in algebra. So you have the same problem, A divided by 3 equals 7. And now what they're going to say is, okay, first, remember in our last video how I said you have to first identify the variable. The variable in this problem is A. Then you have to next identify what's being done to A. So in this section particularly, it's helpful if you say A divided by 3 equals 7, because that will remind you that you're dividing by 3. Because sometimes people accidentally make the mistake of working with the 7 instead of the 3. So if you say out loud A divided by 3, then in your head, hopefully, you remember that that means that you need to multiply each side by 3 to undo it. So you say what's being done to A? A is being divided by 3. So to undo that, we're going to have to multiply by 3. Then these 3's go away. Let me go ahead. The 3's go away because they are cross-simplified out. And then you are left with A on this side equals, and then 7 times 3 gives you 21. Then they want you to plug it back into the problem to check it, just like we've been doing. So you're going to write check. The original problem was A divided by 3 equals 7. You got 21 divided by 3 equals 7, and you get 7 equals 7. So that checked out as a correct problem. So now you want to pause your recording, and you want to go ahead and work on problem A. Only work on problem A to begin with, so that you can make sure that you're doing A correctly before you go on and work on B, C, and D. So pause the video now. All right, and welcome back. So for problem A, you should have first asked yourself, what's the variable? The variable in this problem is X. The next question you ask yourself is, what's being done to X? X is being divided by 8, and then that equals 9. So since X is being divided by 8, you're going to multiply both sides by 8, because that's how you undo dividing by 8. So then we're going to go ahead and switch colors here, and we will cross simplify out those two 8's because they cross each other out. And then you are left with X, because that's the only thing left over here, notice that X, equals 9 times 8, which is 72. Now don't forget, it does say to check your solution, notice that in the directions. So off to the side, you want to write check. This should be happening next to you. Now if you don't have space down here in this portion of your paper, then you want to go ahead and go up there. There's some blank space just above where the answer lines are. You want to use that space. Whatever you need to do, you need to make sure that you get all of this in a nice, neat, orderly fashion so that you can view everything that you've done in each step. Neatness and organization is going to really begin to matter in these sections with algebra. So let's go ahead and get on with our checking. So to check, remember the very first step is going to be to write the original problem, which was X divided by 8 equals 9. The next step is going to be to plug in what we got for X, which was 72, and then to leave the rest of the problem as it was. So we get 72 divided by 8 equals 9. And then we need to process the problem on this left side. 72 divided by 8 is in fact 9. 9 is equal to 9. So that is correct. All right, let's go ahead and look at B. So again, the first thing you ask yourself with B is what's the variable? The variable is Y. What's being done to Y? Y is being divided by 4. So let's go ahead and undo dividing by 4 by multiplying both sides by 4. Because remember, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So now, in this different color, you can see we're going to cross simplify those 4's, and we're left with Y equals 32. So now that you know that Y equals 32, and notice I'm putting the Y directly below where the Y came from. See the Y that's still left over here? That's why it's directly below right there. So I would want you to do the same thing. Then what you're going to do, since you have the problem done now, is in that top right corner or next to it, you're going to write check. Then we start with the original problem again. Remember, our original problem was Y divided by 4 equals 8. Then we plug it into check. So we're going to write 32, which was our answer, divided by 4 equals 8. And then we're going to do the math. Is 32 divided by 4? Let me go ahead and just move this over a little bit. 8, and then we get times 4. Sorry, I just needed to make a little bit more space there. So is 32 divided by 4 in fact 8? Yes, it is. So 8 is equal to 8, and that is correct. Again, if you need extra space, you need to be working in the top left margin of your paper or anywhere else on that page that you can find white space. All right, now when you look at example C, it says m divided by 5 equals 9. So to identify the variable, we're going to first find the letter. That's the m. What's being done to m? Well, m is being divided by 5. So we need to undo dividing by 5, and the way that we need to undo that is multiplying by 5. I want to take just a second to point out that my 5 here is very noticeably on the top, and my 5 down here is very noticeably on the bottom. So try not to do your problem so that it looks like this. You don't want to do this because you want to be able to clearly see that this 5 and this 5 here are going to cross simplify with each other. So then you're left with m equals 9 times 5 is 45. Okay, so you're done with that part. Then we're going to go on, and let me go ahead and erase this and just move it over so that we have more room. So now we're going to go on to the checking part. So we're going to write check in the top right corner or just right next to it. We're going to write the original problem again, which is m divided by 5 equals 9. Then we're going to plug in our answer, whatever we got down here for m equals 45. So we're going to write 45. And then we're going to leave the rest of the problem the same. 5 equals 9. So now on this very last line here, we're going to do the division. 45 divided by 5 is in fact 9. 9 is equal to 9, so our problem checks out. Now if you got any part of this incorrect, or you didn't check your answer, or yours looks a little bit different, you want to make sure that you correct it now. I don't want you to have to correct it in class. Just go ahead and correct it now, please. All right, so now let's take a look at D. D is a little bit different. It's the same exact type of problem, but what they want you really to realize with D for the example is that the variable can appear either on the right or the left. It's not always going to appear on the right. It's not always going to appear on the left. So again, we start every single problem the same way. First, identify the variable. In this problem, the variable is B, and it's on the right-hand side. So then you ask yourself, what's being done to B? B is actually being divided by 2, because remember, that's what that fraction bar means, division. So now to undo dividing by 2, we're going to multiply both sides. Remember, both sides has to happen by 2. We're multiplying both sides by 2 so that we can go ahead and cross simplify these 2's right here. Then that will leave us with B. And then 30 times 2 gives us 60. It is totally fine for us to have 60 equals B. It means the same thing as B equals 60. I don't want you to flip it around right now because as we go through algebra, you're going to be introduced to integers, negative and positive, and then at that point, when you have to switch things around, the rules change. So I don't want you to get into the habit of just flip-flopping them. But I do want to point out that 60 equals B is saying the same thing as B equals 60. Excuse me. So now on the right-hand side, we're going to go ahead and do our check as we've been doing each time. So we're going to write check, and then we're going to start with the original problem. The original problem is 30 equals B divided by 2. Remember, our next step is going to be to plug in whatever we got for B. So first I'm going to write the 30 on the left because that was in the original problem, divided by 2. Now I just want to fill in what I got for B, and what I got, remember over here, was 60. So I'm going to write 60 in right there. And then I'm going to solve each side separately. Obviously the 30 remains the 30 because it's that way the whole time. And then 60 divided by 2 actually gives you 30. So 30 is in fact equal to 30, and that's how you check your problem. All right, so now we're looking at the top of textbook page 563. On 563, it says in words, sorry, that's my chihuahua. Hold on one second. All right, sorry about that. Now we're looking at the multiplication property of equality. And just like the division property of equality, the addition property of equality, and the subtraction property of equality, basically what all 4 of these properties are saying is, in order for the equation to remain equal, you have to do what you do to one side to the other. So you have to be fair. It has to stay balanced. And that equal sign, remember, is the river that divides the 2 sides. So it says, if you multiply each side of an equation by the same non-zero number, the 2 sides remain equal. So the whole purpose is for this to remain equal so that you can solve for the variable and isolate it, get it by itself. So in the example, it says 3 equals 3, 3 times 6 equals 3 times 6, and 18 equals 18. So that's just showing you that we've multiplied both of these numbers by 6, and we still get 18 on each side. Then for this problem, it's showing you that x divided by 4 equals 7, x divided by 4 times 4 equals 7 times 4 will give you x equals 28. So it says when you solve an equation by multiplying each side of the equation by the same number, you are using the multiplication property of equality. So you don't want to be confused when you look at your vocabulary tests. You don't want to be confused and think, okay, because this is a division problem, this is the division property of equality. It's not. This is the multiplication property of equality because it's what you're doing to it. So when you're talking about assigning a property to the problem, the property is actually referring to, so the property, you want to write this off to the side, is, let me not say is, let's say the property applies to what you do, whoops, not what you're given. Okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that again. So what I mean by that is, in this problem, this original problem here, the x divided by 4 equals 7. So this is what you're given, right? What you're given is a division problem. But what you do, let me change colors here. What you do is you multiply each side by 4. So that's what you do, multiply by 4. Okay, so therefore, if I'm asking you on a vocabulary test or to justify some sort of information on a test question, and I say which property applies here, you would say that the multiplication property of equality is what's being used here to solve the equation. It's not the division property of equality. All right, so what you want to take a look at here for example 2, it says the weight of an object on the moon is 1/6 that of its weight on Earth. So I'm even thinking to myself off to the side, 1/6 of its weight, actually. If an object weighs 35 pounds on the moon, write and solve a division equation to find its weight on Earth. So the first part of this says, and I'm just going to go ahead and highlight it in green again, the first part of that says to write. And that's important because a lot of students forget to write the original equation. They just want to go straight to solving it. So let's look and see how they've done it. What they're looking at in words is the weight of an object on Earth divided by 6, because 1/6 actually means the same thing as something divided by 6. Okay? So it says divided by 6 equals the weight of the moon. So then you want to now they're defining the variable, let W represent, let's see, there we go. Let W represent the weight of the object on Earth, okay? So if this is how much it weighs on Earth, let's go ahead and make our own little bar diagram. So I'm going to erase this. Please don't erase yours, but let's go ahead and make our own bar diagram right here. Okay, so it says let W represent the weight of the object on Earth. So that's W. And then you're going to split it into 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're just going to add a little bit here so it makes 6. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. So it's saying this is the total weight, and then it says, for the bar diagram, it says if an object weighs 35 pounds on the moon, so that means you're going to put the 35 in one of those chunks there. Then how much does it weigh on Earth? So you would have a 35 here, a 35 here, a 35 here. Gets a little crazy, so I'm going to have to go ahead and change colors so that you can actually see it. A 35 here and a 35 here. So what will you do to find out what the total weight was? Well, you'll take the 35, which was the number that's in each box, and you'll multiply it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 5 times 6 is 30, 6 times 3 is 18, 19, 20, 21. So 210. So the entire weight is going to be 210 pounds. So pounds. All right, so you want to make sure that you have all of this off to the side. Now this is the bar diagram. The second thing they showed you was the actual problem worked out. So let's go ahead and look at that on the next slide. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and show you here on this slide. We're just going to try and make some room for it. All right, so what we have here is the original problem, w divided by 6 equals 35. I'm aware it's already written there. I would like you to write it again, please. Then you want to look and say, okay, w is my variable. What's being done to w? It's being divided by 6. So that means we're going to have to do the opposite or the inverse, which is to multiply each side by 6. So now we're going to, let's try and see if we can make that a little bigger. Now we're going to cross simplify our 6's, and we are left with w equals what 35 times 6 is, which is 210. So you can see that regardless of which way you solve it, you get the same answer both ways. All right, you want to go ahead and pause your video now and try E on your own. All right, welcome back. So let's go ahead and look and see what we have here. It says Nathan picked a total of 60 apples. Okay, so if I'm already thinking about a problem, I'm thinking that the number 60 has to be on one side. Okay, perfect. And it doesn't matter, currently it doesn't matter. Hold on one second. It doesn't matter which side it goes on. So let's just start with 60. That's the total. Might even want to label it with total. Then it says in 1/3 of an hour. Okay, so it took him 1/3 of an hour to pick them. So now it says write and solve an equation, a division equation, to find how many apples Nathan could pick in 1 hour. All right, so let's go ahead and think about this first. The first thing that you want to think about, let's try and think about a bar diagram. So we've got our bar diagram here, and it says that he picked 60 apples in 1/3 of an hour. So that means we're going to break this into 3 chunks, right? And then what we're going to put inside the box has to be the 60 apples, because this is 1/3, correct? This is 1/3, and this is 1/3, right? Because all 3 added together make 3/3, which is the whole bar. So that means if this one is 60, then this one is 60, and this one is 60. So the total amount of apples that Nathan could pick in 1 hour would be 180 apples. On a test, you would want to make sure that you had apples along with your answer of 180, and that you either showed the bar diagram or the division problem. I will set the division problem up now. All right, so I've set the division problem up here. It says x divided by 3 equals 60. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to say, okay, what's our variable? Our variable is x, and then we are going to identify what's being done to x. X is being divided by 3. So let's go ahead and undo dividing by 3 by multiplying both sides by 3. Now remember, this is the multiplication property of equality. It says we need to multiply both sides by 3 in order to keep it equal. So now we're going to cross simplify our 3's. We're left with x equals, then 60 times 3 gives us 180. And we can also even check that out to the side. Start with our original problem, which was x divided by 3 equals 60. Then we can plug in our answer for x, which was 180. Keep everything else the same and see if it balances out. 180 divided by 3 is in fact 60, and 60 is equal to 60. So our problem works out. If there's any part of this that you didn't get, you want to make sure, it would benefit you to have both the bar diagram example as well as the algebraic example. But if you have one or the other, it's fine. But again, it would benefit you to have both. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at the example 3, which is on textbook page 564. Example 3 says, Carla is buying ribbon for costumes. There are those costumes again. She wants to divide the ribbon into 8.5-inch pieces for 16 costumes. Write and solve a division equation to find the length of the ribbon Carla should buy. All right, so at first glance, this might not, if this problem was alone outside of this section and you didn't know that this was supposed to be written this way, you want to make sure you pay very, very close attention to where it says write and solve a division equation. So the equation itself has to be division, because there is obviously a way to set these up as multiplication equations as well. So you want to first start by saying, okay, I'm going to set this up as a division equation. So it says she wants to divide the ribbon into 8.5-inch pieces for 16 costumes. So R is going to be the length of the ribbon. See, they told you what to use here. So R is going to be the length of the ribbon divided by 8.5-inch pieces equals 16. So now that you have that, you ask yourself what's being done to the variable. The variables are, so it's being divided by 8.5. So we're going to go ahead and multiply both sides by 8.5. So then this 8.5 goes away, and we are left with r equals, and then out to the side, you're going to want to do the division over here. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, because some of you still aren't super great with division of, or multiplication of decimals. So I'm just going to go ahead and model that, the 16 times 8.5. Remember, when you're multiplying decimals, you're just going to multiply it as if there were no decimals there, and then move the decimal out and back in at the end. So 6 times 5 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. 0 for a placeholder here. 8 times 6 is 48. Oops, whoa, try that again. 8 times 6 is 48. Hold on, there we go, 4. And then 8 times 1 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So hopefully I got all that right, because with that mess up on the screen. 0 plus 0 is 0. 8 plus 8 is 16. Carry the 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. And 1 here. So now again, we're not finished with the problem. We did the first step, which was multiplying as if there are no decimals. But then we need to do the last step, which is to move that decimal out by 1 space. And notice this is 1 space because that's all we need to do to get the decimal out of the number 8.5. So then we move it back in 1 space. And I said I should see you still writing this because I know this is something we need to practice. So now because you have 136.0 as your answer, so you have that right here. Because you have 136.0, what that means is you're going to go ahead and cross out the 0.0 because you don't really need that. So your final answer is going to be 136. R equals 136. All right, you can pause the video now and go ahead and work on F by yourself. All right, welcome back. Allison is baking a pie. She wants 4.5 strawberries in each serving for 8 people. Write and solve a division equation to find how many strawberries Allison will need. So first, since we're doing this problem all on our own now, let's first go ahead and define the variable. So we're going to say S is going to be the number of strawberries she's going to need, because that makes sense. So we'll just say S is the number of strawberries. Perfect. So it's saying that she wants 4.5 strawberries in each serving for 8 people. So that means we're going to do S, that's the whole number, divided by 4.5, which is going to be for each person, right? And then equals the 8 people. Now I'm going to clean this up a little bit over here so this doesn't get confusing. That was an S. There we go. All right, so now let's go ahead and see. What's being done to S? Well, it's being multiplied by 4.5. So now we're going to it's being divided by 4.5. My apologies, I got ahead of myself. So in order to undo dividing by 4.5, we're going to multiply each side by 4.5. So let's go ahead and do that here. We're going to cross simplify those out and we'll be left with S equals. Now off in the corner you want to do 4.5 times 8. And again, multiplying decimals, we're going to multiply it as if there are no decimals. So 40, 8 times 4 is 32, plus 4 is 36. Then we're just going to go 1 swoop out and 1 swoop back in. So our answer here is going to be 36. So then we also want to make sure that we've identified both things. So the first thing we want to identify is what our original equation was, which was S divided by 4.5 equals 8. So this is one answer. And then our final answer is S equals 36. So you want to go ahead and write that as well. All right, you finally made it here to the guided practice. I do want you to go ahead and work on textbook page 564. And I just want you to do a few problems. So I'd like you to go ahead and try problems number 1 through 5. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, though, exactly what I want number 1 to look like. Now, I had a couple people, more than a couple actually, where they did perfect today. They copied exactly the way I wanted the first one to be done on the last section, and then they did numbers 2, 3, or 2, 3, and 4 their way. So you don't want to do it that way. The whole purpose of me showing you exactly how to set up number 1 is so that you can set them all up that way. So for number 1, first you have m divided by 6 equals 10. I do want you to rewrite the m divided by 6 equals 10 because we're doing multiplication, and see this number 1 here kind of makes it tough for you to be able to show that you're multiplying each side by the inverse operation. So if you'll first rewrite the problem, then we're going to say, okay, our variable here is m. What's being done to m? M is being divided by 6. So let's undo dividing by 6 by multiplying by 6. And in fact, you don't even need to have that number 1 there because I'd rather you just be able to see the work. So we're undoing divided by 6 by multiplying by 6 because then, whoopsie, hold on, m divided by 6. Okay, because then we can now simply cross simplify out the 6's and then we're left with m equals 60. So that's our first step. Now notice in the instructions it says to check your solution. So our next step is going to be right out next to it, not above it, below it, next to it. You're going to write check. Then you need to again have the original problem, which is m divided by 6 equals 10. Then you need to go ahead and plug in whatever you got for m. So notice right here you got m equals 60. So you're going to put a 60 right here, but then everything else needs to remain the same. Remember, you're not changing anything, you're only plugging it in to see if your answer works. And then the last step is going to be to say, okay, 60 divided by 6 is in fact 10, and 10 is equal to 10. So what I've shown you here, I'm about to outline it in green. So what I've shown you here, you do not need to outline your own, but what I'm telling you is this is what each problem should look like for numbers 1, 2, and 3. For number 4, you're going to first start with the equation, and then you're going to give me the answer. The work will look similar to this work here. Good luck, and I look forward to our next class session.